Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now, unfortunately, we've seen a really unfortunate fake out from Jasmy. I was getting a little bit excited. I'm sure you probably were too if you're a Jasmy fan, but of course, it was not meant to be, at least not yet. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. What do we do next, right? Like, is it all over? Did we miss our shot? A lot of that type of stuff. We're going to be going through that. We're also just going to be looking at kind of where Jasmy sits within the market, what we could see potentially a little bit longer term from here. So anyway, let's go ahead. We'll dive right in, starting out with crypto bubbles. We'll actually start on the day, and we can see on the day technically green, but still a lot of kind of mix in here. You know, a fair bit of reds, a fair bit of greens, but I would say at this point probably more greens than reds. Still definitely a fair bit of reds that I wouldn't say that we've really kind of found a super strong place in the market. Things are kind of wobbling all over the place. And I think that's because there's not really a super strong sentiment. I mean, people have just got crushed on liquidations, a larger liquidation event than FTX even, which is pretty surprising. So I think right now people are just kind of trying to take a little bit of a breather and maybe recover from what we just witnessed. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing here. If we do look at the week, obviously things down really strongly still, 20 to 30% kind of across the board. So, you know, pretty rough out there, at least so far. You know, we are starting to see some things bounce back here and there, but still overall looking not particularly great. Now, if we do look at the Jasmy chart, though, we can see a couple of different things here. Obviously, the biggest one being that, you know, we thought we maybe had a breakout here. We did get rejected a couple of different times on these wicks, and then we slammed right back into this descending wedge that we have been forming basically since the beginning of December, so a really long time. We did see, you know, this wick kind of break out here. We have seen these rug wicks before, so not something that's typically too bad here, but what I will say is if you are trying to trade Jasmy on leverage, this type of thing can really ruin your day, unfortunately, because if you are trying to follow this structure, you still technically would be directionally correct at this point, but you very likely would have gotten liquidated by something like this, which is really too bad. So that's why you just, you know, kind of PSA, you need to be very careful when you are trading leverage for this exact reason. So more on that here in a second, but what we can see is we have kind of still fallen back into this descending wedge. We're continuing to consolidate. We're kind of still following the line here. Like I said, we did have that little bit of a fake out, which is unfortunate because it looked like, you know, it was a perfect setup for what looked like to be a breakout and a possible continued run to the upside. Jasmy in a vacuum maybe does that, but since it is an altcoin and we've seen altcoins just kind of wholesale get destroyed, not really meant to be though, right? But we are seeing, you know, this is very much kind of falling in line from what we're expecting in a continued kind of consolidationary period. Now, something that we need to kind of take note of here is if we extend these lines out just a little bit, we are going to see very quickly that there is not much further to go. I mean, we are very closely approaching the end here. Maybe, you know, we could adjust these and maybe go from the wicks, you know, the bottoms of the wicks here, and maybe include this fake out and do something kind of like this. Not exactly great, but it does buy us a little bit more distance to run. That, frankly, you know, that might be a better that might be a better look, just because of, you know, I just don't think we're going to see something happen here within, you know, kind of by the end of the month. That just doesn't seem super realistic to me. It could, anything can happen, but just kind of based on the overall sentiment in the crypto market, where Bitcoin's sitting at, where a lot of the larger alts are sitting at, it doesn't really seem super reasonable to me. So, but again, you know, that's just kind of my bias and my opinion here. If we do look at the RSI, sitting about pretty good. I mean, I would say if we're looking at kind of in context of the wider market, this is actually pretty good. So I'm definitely pleased with how Jasmy has kind of been holding up with this pullback. It's overall looking pretty good, I would say. So if you are interested in trading Jasmy, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, whatever, anything like that, just feel free to use my link in the description below to BTCC. They are doing that 10% bonus on first time deposits, which is a really good deal. It's free money. I love free money. I'm sure you do too. And then they also have the extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user. So they're basically throwing a whole bunch of money at you to come get you to trade with them, if that is something that you are interested in. Also, no VPN or KYC necessary. So again, if that's important to you as well, they can also accommodate that. So like I said, just check the link in the description below. It should bring you to this landing page. You can go on ahead, get signed up, all that type of stuff, and just kind of check it out and see what you think. Now, moving on, I want to take a closer look at the crypto total to market cap, because this is kind of relevant to Jasmy and the wider alts market just kind of more generally, right? And so what we can see here is it did look like we were setting up for a really nice kind of consolidation here. We could see consistent lower highs, very easy to see, consistent higher lows, very also easy to see as well. But then obviously we saw this massive break and huge liquidation event. You know, it looked like we may have been trying to break out here, but could never really get some like sustained momentum to the upside. You know, a lot of selling pressure kind of as we come out this wedge, and then we kind of saw this move and this break down to the downside. as I have mentioned for basically since we got into this wedge or into this consolidationary period, I did say anything between these two lines, I don't care at all. We now are officially below this line, right? And so I would say that the alt market is sitting in a generally more precarious spot than what we were this time last week, let's say. I still don't think it's too bad of a position, just because we do have a little bit of this liquidity zone sitting here that it does look like we have kind of come back up to and settled on. We can see if we fall below this though, things get a little bit rough. So we are kind of sitting here, and we can also see this is the 618 fib level. So I think, between these two things, we're seeing a little bit of a decent bit of support here, but kind of like we saw with this kind of rogue wick, right? I mean, if we see a liquidation event, or if we see a break from below this and we stay below, it's very likely that we probably come back down to this like 0.5 level, potentially even a little bit lower. Maybe we even come back down to like here, less than $1 trillion. I do think is a possibility there. So a lot of different options, kind of coming in here, not looking particularly good, as I said, because we did break out of this kind of like consolidationary zone, but we are sitting on, I would say, probably kind of the last level of support before we start to see things get a little bit ugly. So anyway, just kind of something to think about and consider as we are kind of looking at the overall market. If you look at Bitcoin though, we did a video a little bit earlier talking about how Bitcoin is sitting in an overall really, really good place. And so if you look at Bitcoin, I would say that I'm not super concerned, just because Bitcoin still fundamentally looks to be in a good position. We haven't really seen any super special run out of altcoins yet. So obviously we saw a little bit here, but this isn't what alts really can do. I think this was kind of a precursor in my opinion. Now, of course, this could have just been it, and it will be like the lamest, most underwhelming alt season in the world, but who knows? It's really hard to say what's actually going to happen. So that's kind of what we're looking at here with the overall alt market. I will say, kind of up at at this point in time, I would say Jasmy was maybe kind of underperforming, not doing particularly well against kind of what some of the other cryptos saw. But now that we're seeing some of this, and particularly we're seeing some alts getting just absolutely crushed, Jasmy is holding up relatively well. So potentially Jasmy's place in the market kind of switching around a little bit, which I do think is pretty good. I did want to take a look at a couple of different X posts though, just so we can see a couple of different things, getting some background and information on Jasmy. We can see this super long post here talking about why Jasmy is potentially a good bet, and some of the promise that we could see out of Jasmy. And so obviously it's a very, very long post. I have liked and reposted it. So if you are interested in checking this out and kind of reading it in its totality, I will have it on my X account. My X account is in the link in the description below. So if you are looking for that, just check it out there. Just general good practice. Don't click any links that in the comment section. They're probably scams. Anything that I will post that I want you guys to see, I'll just leave it in the video description, so it's not misleading or anything like that. But basically the TLDR here is that there's a whole bunch of things that Jasmy has Jasmy kind of flying in its direction. Obviously it's a top 50, which is good because it's got increased visibility, things like that. It's a Japanese organization. It's going through IoT. It's the first compliant Japanese crypto. There's a whole bunch of different things here. We'll kind of leave it at that. But if you are interested in checking it out, just go ahead and check that link to my X in the description below. The second one we also talked about, I have also liked, and I quoted this one. For whatever reason, when you quote it, it doesn't actually show up here. But I did quote this one because I do think it is really good news. And so what we can see is a consistent, essentially draining of Jasmy, Jasmy coins from the exchange reserves, which is really good. Obviously, as this continues to kind of drain lower and lower, the less there's going to be on the reserves, which means the higher possibility of a potential supply shock, and that's when we see some potentially really, really insane gains. So that's just something to keep an eye on. This is really, really good to see. I mean, basically since the peak of the bear market, we've been just consistently having a drawdown on the exchange reserve, which is really good to see. So this is something that I'm quite encouraged by. Hopefully we continue to kind of see it run that way, right? I mean, getting to sub 10 billion, that would mean of the total supply, less than 20% is sitting on exchanges. That'd be fantastic. Even getting down to 5 billion, that would mean 10% is on exchanges. We need to probably get to those types of levels to have any sort of realistic chance of seeing a supply shock, again, in my opinion. So we're a bit of a ways away from that, but if we continue to see this trend happening, it's possible, right? I mean, this would be about 2027 continuing kind of on this slope. So we would need to see this kind of accelerate if we were to see something like this happen in this bull market. But again, maybe it's a next cycle type of play. Hard to say for sure. But overall, I think Jasmy kind of holding up pretty well in context of the larger alt market. Of course, alts are looking a little bit rough, just kind of all around. So, you know, Jasmy, of course, being one of those, price not doing as great as I think any of us would have hoped, especially when we did see that fake out. Things were looking kind of exciting for us for, you know, during kind of that little bit of that run up that we saw, but of course, you know, ended a little bit early, which is too bad. But overall, you know, I'm pretty pleased with what we're seeing. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe. I'd also really like to hear kind of your thoughts. How do you feel about Jasmy? What, you know, do you still think it's good? Do you think it's bad? As I've kind of mentioned in some previous videos, you know, this isn't a coin that I'm looking to continue to like actively scoop up in droves, but I like, it's a solid hold for me, maybe even a light buy. You know, maybe if we see, honestly, if I could have caught that liquidation wick, I probably would have bought more, but unfortunately that wick was a little bit fleeting, which is too bad. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm pretty pleased with what we're seeing. Hopefully, you know, hopefully you guys are seeing the same thing and agreeing. Like I said, just leave comments in the comment section below. I'd love to hear kind of what your guys' thoughts are, suggestions, questions, stuff like that. I always love hearing from you guys. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.